record.
Thank you, Angelina. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Just going to give everyone a minute to come in and get settled. And we won't keep everyone waiting too long. I know how busy everyone is. That's the whole point. You're all working parents, so no one has extra time. Quick housekeeping matter, we are recording, so in case you need to multitask or for those who've registered and can attend. And also, dads count too, Abby, dads count too. And that is a good housekeeping point to say. We're talking about moms, the panel is moms, but that's caregivers, that's dads, that's, we all have those roles that we're balancing. So although there'll be some things that are specific, maybe we might talk about breastfeeding or giving birth, usually that's just the mom, but really the broader picture and everything that we have to balance is for everyone. So know when we use the term mom, if you are a caregiver, if you are a dad, let's go. Oh my gosh, and Erin, you're waiting to go into labor. So we're going to practice some deep breathing first and settle everyone down. But I do want to start by saying thank you. And I've also been told my internet is a little unstable. Murphy's Law, great. But so let me know if I miss anything, but or you can't hear me. But really, I'm so grateful you've all joined us. I'm so excited about the panelists that we have. But in all seriousness, you have very limited time, and for you to join us today and have this discussion and register is really exciting to us because we think it's an important discussion to have. And also it means you're prioritizing you, which, let's face it, as working moms and parents, we're not always good at. We're not always good at remembering ourselves and giving time to ourselves. We do want this to be collaborative and interactive, so keep the comments coming, keep the questions coming. We've got some Lawyers in House team members here who are going to watch in case us as a panel and me as a moderator don't see, because we do want you to participate. And we've got a few poll questions we're going to ask the audience so we can get an understanding of your thoughts and your feelings and where you're at. They're completely anonymous, so you can be honest, and please do participate. So Angelina, who is an awesome member of our marketing team at Lawyers in House, can you give the audience just a quick rundown of what they can do to participate, please?
Hi, everyone. So for those of you who are new to Teams, or I'm going to be giving a quick rundown of how to participate in this panel. So on above, all the way up there, you'll see a chat bar as well as a section for you to raise your hand. So if you have any questions throughout the panel, don't hesitate to raise your hand, and you can unmute your mic and ask a question, or you can just type it in chat and we will be happy to answer them. Additionally, I'm going to be sending a anonymous form in the chat. So if you have any questions or you want to share your experiences as a working mother anonymously, feel free to submit them there in that form. That being said, does anyone have any pressing questions on how to use Teams? Okay, awesome. If not, I'm going to pass it back to our all-star panel.
Thanks, Angelina. Appreciate it. And one final point before we start, and the panelists and I were just discussing this offline. We have amazing warrior women on our panel today, and I am amazed by them, and they are super successful. But our point is not to say, wow, look how great they are. You don't measure up. And this isn't a social media post, which that's often the feeling. Today is about sharing and supporting and elevating. So we're not here to say, oh, these are all the amazing things that we've accomplished. We're here to say, these are the difficulties we've had. These are the struggles we face. These are the nights, I'm outing you, Sarah. She joined on the call and prep and said, I didn't sleep last night. She's got a 21-month-old and a 4-year-old. This is reality. We're here to share our experiences and to build community. So this isn't about judging yourself. This is about creating space for ourselves and congratulating ourselves and helping each other from different tips and experiences we've had, even if it's just to know you're not alone. There's value in that. So thank you. And on that note, it isn't just about today. The amazing marketing team here at Lawyers in House has created a LinkedIn group, and it's called Parents in House. And it's a place where we hope you will join and we can create this community, keep the conversation going, keep the sharing going, resources, whatever you need. So we hope that you'll join and keep the discussion going. Okay. So, as I said, amazing panelists. Sarah Nahum is a clinical social worker and maternal mental health specialist at North York Therapy, the mother of 2, as I just mentioned, 2 girls, 21 months and 4. Tanya Walker, Managing Director and Commercial Litigator at Walker Law Society of Ontario bencher. I think this is your 2nd term. And I will say, Tanya, Tanya was the first Black bencher elected to the Law Society, which is great. But then I'm like, 230 years? Really? So maybe that's our next panel, Tanya, about moving things forward a little bit faster and the glacier pace. Thank you, the legal profession. And Tanya is also a legal analyst on CTV, CBC, City TV, and City News, and also the mother of 2 under the age of 5. So probably never sleeps either. And then Angela Yadav rounds off HSBC Canada, which she reminded us will be RBC in 10 short days. So thank you for joining during this crazy time, Angela. She's also a dedicated advocate of DEI and the recipient of the Women in Law Leadership Stronger Together Award in 2023. Angela is also the mother of 3 kids, ages 6, 7, and 12. And I'm going to turn it over to them in a minute to ask them to give a little bit more detailed background about themselves, their career, being a mom. And then we're going to discuss 3 topics. We're going to talk about mental health and identity in motherhood. And then we're going to talk about breaking through the maternal wall. So the systemic discrimination, the gender inequality that we can face as working moms, and what can we help do to solve it? What helped us? What tips can we share together? And then the 3rd topic is the art of balancing work and motherhood. So tips to help us find space and peace and acceptance of ourselves so we can actually survive. And I'm really excited for us to have these positive sharing tips. But if I can tell you, the operations team at Lawyers in House is, except for Jamin, who I know is on the call, is all young women who have not yet had kids. And hearing the discussions we've all had about childbirth and raising kids, now think they don't want to have kids. So we need to remind them that even though it's hard work and not always a big glowing experience, they can still reproduce. And so we'll make sure we share the positive stories. So Angela, why don't you start? Tell us a little bit about yourself and your family.
Yeah, so I am a mother of 3 kids. I'm Associate General Counsel at HSBC Bank Canada. I've been at the bank for 17 plus years. So it is going to be sad when we're no longer HSBC in about 10 days or so. I am a financial crimes legal expert, competition law, regulatory enforcement, yada, yada, yada. But I also live in a chaotic home. So you will see my background. It is not nice and clean and shiny. I am in a completely messy office because I don't have time to clean. And I blurred my background right before this, but just so you know, you can still be successful and live in complete chaos the way I do. I work from home, and I have been working from home since baby number 2, since 2016. So yeah, that's a little bit about myself. I'm not just a lawyer. I also just founded New Westminster Minor Ball Hockey just 4 short months ago. So I'm heavily involved in ball hockey. I have a passion for DE&I as well. So have been doing that for probably 3 or 4 years at the bank. And yeah, I think that's about it. Over to the next person.
That's awesome. Thank you, Angela. And Angela also, I had my kids very, very young, and Angela and I went to law school together, and she babysat my kids in law school. So it's funny how life comes full circle. Tanya, why don't you tell us a little bit about you? Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here today. Before I start, I'd like to thank our law clerk, Rose, who helped me with our presentation, and I'll speak about support systems and how much support systems really help. But I first and foremost would like to thank her. I have been practicing for almost 18 years. I opened Walker Law almost 15 years ago when I had to deal with discrimination based on race and gender. And I thought my job was just hard enough as it is as a trial lawyer. So that's why it came to be. And so our principles we're founded on is respect and equality. It's very, very important for us to respect each other and even clients to respect everyone, including support staff, because I do strongly believe in equality. I serve as a litigator in employment, property, and contracts law. There are about almost 15 people in our firm, including my husband, who works in as his role as IT manager. I also serve as outside counsel to various corporations. And I've been married for almost 7 years next week. We have 2 children under the age of 5, as you mentioned, Christine. So one, she just turned 1 year old, and the other is he's 5 years old. And with respect to the venture, I sit on various committees, but I'm the chair of the Human Rights Monitoring Group, where we send letters of intervention on behalf of lawyers, paralegals, and human rights defenders and judges, just because sometimes people's lives are threatened in various parts of the world for just doing their jobs. So I really enjoy doing that work. And I'm very fortunate to have been re-elected twice. So I'm serving my 3rd term as the first Black female bencher in Ontario. And that's it.
Amazing. Yeah, that's it, right? And that's how a woman would end that, right? That's it. That's Thank you, Tanya. That's wonderful. And Sarah, we're so grateful to have Sarah because we're gathering together as a mostly legal community, but we've got the benefit of someone who is an expert in this area who can help us and let us know, hey, you know what you're feeling is super common, and have some great tips and learnings for us. So Sarah.
Hey everyone, I'm Sarah. I'm a maternal mental health therapist at North York Therapy. I also work for 2 different agencies. Before I became a social worker, I used to work in HR for many years, and I used to help moms and advocate for them in the workplace, and I really realized that there was a need for it, right? And then I decided to go back to school, get a second master's, and become a social worker full-time, and just focus on maternal mental health, because moms really go through a lot, and now when we're trying to juggle, work and our family life, it could really be a lot. So I'm really happy to be a part of this workshop.
Oh, we're grateful. We're grateful to have you. So thank you. Thanks, everyone. And myself, I'm Christine Holmes. I'm the moderator today and the founder and CEO of Lawyers in House. So I started in private practice, but was there very briefly, and then moved in-house to Cineplex, and from there to PepsiCo Canada. I am the mother of 3 old children, which is amazing because I'm so young. And my youngest has Down syndrome. So extra layer to balance if there's anyone else out there with kids with special needs or disabilities. And one of the reasons that I founded Lawyers in House was so that moms and lawyers could have a more balanced life and way to practice law, stay in the profession of law. So Tanya, what you're saying really resonates with me as well. I found it hard to find my space. Even though I was in an amazing organizations, it was still very hard to balance it all. and so I start Lawyers in House will be 5 in a couple of weeks, and one of the other reasons that I founded it was so that we could gather and have community like this and discussions like this. So appreciate it all very much. And Sarah, you didn't say, so I'm outing you again, that Sarah is also the wife of Abby Weiss. And so Abby has created Counsel Well, which is an in-house counsel community. So if you're not, if you're in-house counsel and you're not a member of Counsel Well, we highly recommend you join up. It's a great support community for in-house counsel. We're love to support everything that Abby does there.
Amazing. I also forgot to mention that I have 2 little kids.
Well, because you didn't sleep all night, right? Like
I have a 4-year-old and a 21-month-old. Yes.
See, and that's real life. When you don't sleep, you forget you have kids. But that's awesome. Thanks, Sarah. So let's get into topic number 1. So mental health and identity as a mom. And some of these things, as we said, this is dads and caregivers, but some of these things are specific for, I know there's some brand new moms out there, and then Erin, who's waiting to go into labor any minute. So focusing on you, and this is a bit of a broader stream, I say that, but it's also a broader stream of what society portrays and some of the myths and misconceptions that we've incorporated into our thought process and judgments that we don't even realize. So I feel that there's a lot of imaging out there, being pregnant, having a baby. It's going to be glorious. You're going to glow. You know, I'm hyperemesis. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that. I know Princess Kate had it, or Catherine. So I was like, yay, she's elevating hyperemesis in the world. I vomited every 10 minutes. I was hospitalized. I lost 40 pounds in the first trimester. It was hell. There was no glowing. You know those beautiful pictures like actresses would do of like their bellies, and I'm like lying flat out, like thinking I'm dying. Yet I did it 3 times. So that's not always reality. Or you might think, oh, this is going to bring me and my partner closer together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And then, or you're going to have a perfect, healthy baby. The bottom line is we think, oh, it's all rainbows, it's all sunshine. And that's what people put out. And then that's not the way it is for you. You feel exhausted, you feel out of sync. And then it's like, so then you think there's something wrong with me. It isn't supposed to be that way. So what if it is supposed to be that way? What if it is normal to feel exhausted and to stress and to have conflict and to feel unsupported? I always think, if any of you have read the book, The Road Less Traveled, and the very first sentence is, life is hard. It's very Buddhist Zen. Life is struggle. And I think if we come from that point of view, because why do we always act so surprised? Oh my gosh, I have another problem. Oh my gosh, it's another difficulty. Oh my gosh, it's another hard case. This is our life. It's hard. It's tricky. So let's acknowledge that. And then, discount this bombardment of social media perfection, right? Oh, here's my happy marriage and my kids, and they're perfect, and we're financially set. And oh, look, I have a promotion. This isn't real life. So we want to, just before we jump into the panelists to talk a bit about this, we do have a quick poll question. This is our first one. As I said, it's totally anonymous, but we'd love to hear from the audience on your experience when you became a mom and a new mom. What is it, and even your experience throughout, what has it been like? Is it what you expected? Oh my gosh. Yeah. So as the results come in, so far we're 100%, not even close. I think that's, in some ways, yes, in some ways, no. That's great. But it's and super. So some people exactly what they imagined. That's good. We should find out who was in their community and told them and gave them the heads up. But I think the point is that we're seeing is it's not always what we expect. So let's talk a little bit about the reality and the experiences that people have had. Sarah, do you want to start with some of the biggest myths of being a new mom?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned some of them, right? That your relationship with your partner is going to become stronger after having a baby, where that's not, always the reality. This idea that you'll fall in love with your baby the second you'll meet them, right? You just met them. So even though it's your baby, it can take a little bit of time that you will know exactly what to do, right? Like there's this idea that as a mom, you have your motherly instincts, you'll know what to do when your baby cries, but sometimes you just don't, right? And that's oftentimes where a lot of guilt really comes in. Also this myth that you can be the perfect mom, that you can do it all, that you can be perfect, right? And I think that social media just makes things worse. I mean, I love those influencers that actually, you know, have their hair in a bun and they're like, I didn't take a shower for 2 days and I'm, you know, really struggling, right? Because that's really how it is oftentimes. I think there's another myth, you know, that breastfeeding will come easily and naturally to you, where so many moms do struggle with breastfeeding. Let me see if there's anything else. Right. I mean, I think, you know, and just like, you know, sometimes people are like, oh, you sleep when the baby sleeps, but also you're like, but who's going to take care of everything else around the house and with my job? And right. So you're just like, it's just these expectations are so unrealistic. So I think these are the main ones.
And it's so important, thank you, to understand the pressure that creates and then the judgment of yourself that results from that, right? You're not measuring up, you're not doing as well as you could be. Tanya, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
In terms of professionalism or in personally?
Both.
I think, well, in terms of being a professional, I just assumed that some other people would be able to understand and provide accommodation that I needed. And the other people I'm talking about are judges. So when an example is when I was first chair at a trial when I was pregnant, we usually have to stand when we speak. And so I stood for about 5 hours asking questions during my cross-examination. So I felt I was in a lot of pain because our daughter was kicking. So it felt like she was just kicking a lot. And then it felt like she was pushing down on my pelvis. So it was a lot of pain. So during the break, I asked the registrar if she could ask the judge if I would be allowed to sit down for the rest of the cross-examinations. It was near the end of the day. And then I was told that I would have to ask every lawyer in the courtroom if that was okay with them, and if it was okay with them, then it was okay with the judge. So I felt like I was like waddling around, because I was probably around 8 months. So waddling around asking everyone, I felt a little bit embarrassed and humiliated having to do that. And then what I did is the following day, even though I was in pain, I just stood up because I just didn't want to be humiliated by asking everyone to sit down. And another example is right after I had our daughter, I was in the process of completing another trial. And I set up my pumping station in the library, the law library. I felt a little bit embarrassed about having to do that and setting up an area so people wouldn't see me pumping. And then I was worried about the milk and all that. And so I asked the registrar for that particular judge if he could extend our recess by 10 minutes, because by the time I went to go to my pumping station, take off my robes, pump the milk, put the milk away, scarf down something to eat, because you're a little bit hungrier when usually you're pumping milk, I would need the extra 10 minutes. So I was then told that the break would be shortened. And so I didn't get a chance to pump at all. So I had to argue in pain. And I was being asked all these questions, and I couldn't even concentrate. So I thought, okay, I just have to worry about trying to win this trial. And so the only answer that really matters out of these 4 questions is this one. So that's the only one I answered, because I couldn't, I was in so much pain. And then I was criticized for not answering all the questions. And I said, I don't know what to tell you. I'm just in a lot of pain. I don't know what to say. And I had leaked through my clothes, my robes. So I was also embarrassed about that. And I assumed that I just thought 10 minutes, an extra 10 minutes. I didn't think it was that big of a deal. But the kind of vibe I got being in the same room, because trials are in person, is like, you're either a professional woman or a stay-at-home mom. I'm not supporting a hybrid. That's the kind of feeling I got. And so after that, even though I had a number of trials scheduled for the rest of the year, I just adjourned them all. Because I'm like, it's just too humiliating. It's my choice if I want to breastfeed our daughter. I had her on a Friday. I went back to work on Monday. I really don't think it's that big of a deal, but if it is, then I'll just adjourn, and we can deal with this next year. So I really did not expect that to happen with our court system. I thought the court system would be a little bit more accommodating.
And and I remember when you told me that story, I think it was one of the first times we chatted, Tanya, when you mentioned that story to me. And I was like Mount Vesuvius. Like I was just so angry and so overwhelmed that, we're at this point in life, it's 2022 and 3, when these things were happening to you, and that's still the reality. I mean, that's still that asking to breastfeed, asking for 10 minutes gets you punished, right? And like, how is that? And what could you do? And who could you go to? And what could you? And I mean, you're a senior counsel and a bencher at the Law Society of Ontario, right? And this is so. I just think it's such a thank you for so authentically sharing that. And I think it's such a great example of the changes that still need to be made. And that's an important part of this discussion. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it is about 27 years that there has been more women graduate from law schools in Canada than men. 27 years. So where are we? Right? Why are we not? We should be, if we were the majority coming into the profession, we should be the majority of chief legal officers and general counsels. We should be the majority of managing partners. We should be the majority of senior equity partners, and we're not. And so there's obviously and that's just looking at women, not adding in, disabilities, race, sexual orientation, all of the other barriers. There's clearly work to be done. So we need to talk about this. We need to figure out what are the solves. What can we do? And as Tanya, you said, part of it is you started your own company, as did I, to try to create a space. I mean, not everybody's in a position or has the desire to do that. That's fair. But I think a big part of it is how many times in your story did you just say you felt embarrassed, right? You felt guilty. And so how do we create space for that? Like, instead of you feeling supported and accommodated, which we're supposed to be the profession that fights for other people to get accommodated in their workspace. Where's the accommodation internally? I mean, when you turn that light on, I mean, that's some pretty scary stories. So thank you. Angela, how about you, for when you're first having the kids, what were some of the experiences and realities that you faced?
Yeah, so I mean, I had my first baby in 2011, and I remember being pregnant and not being able to move. Like I was so sick that I like didn't realize that this is what it was going to be like, that I couldn't get off my couch. I got onto diclectin. I was popping 10, 12 pills a day. I didn't want to do that because I had a healthy, I wanted to be all natural and organic. I didn't want to have sugar. I changed my toothpaste. I got my silver fillings out before I got pregnant. I wanted to be that kind of mother, and I wanted to have this pure pregnancy. And then I had to pop 12 diclectin a day because I couldn't get off the couch. So that was unexpected. And I think it took about a week or two for the diclectin to work, but then I still had really horrible mornings. And this was this is 2011. Nobody was working from home. I couldn't get into work in the morning. Like I told my managers, I cannot get up to work in the morning. I'm not a morning person to begin with. I'm a night owl. So for me to get to the office by 9 or 9:30 is a huge struggle on the best of days. But to be able to get to work at by 9:30 when I couldn't get, I was really sick in the morning, was impossible. I was lucky enough that my managers were great. So I was able to come into the work. I would probably come in around 11:30 every day, and it was okay because if I came in that late, I could stay a bit later. And so I had the trust of the managers in me. So my experience was positive, that, hey, look, I'm sick. This is not the way I was expecting it to go, but you can come in to work a bit later, and that was okay. And I don't think anybody in the office really did that. I was sort of the first. So that's a positive sort of story on my end. And I will say off the bat, if I had not been working at HSBC, I would never have had 3 kids. So unlike the experience of Tanya, it's been a wonderful experience for me by and large at HSBC. So.
And I thought that was when we met in Vancouver, Angela, in the fall, you said that to me, that you wouldn't have had baby number 3 if you weren't at HSBC. Lilac Bosma is the GC there. There's a woman GC previously. Lilac is such a great progressive champion of a leader. And that was just such a powerful statement, I thought, that if you weren't at this company, you would have only have had 2 kids. You know, when you listen to, and like Tanya, I think of the experiences you went through, then you canceled all your trials, right? Like you can't, these are made, that's huge. That's a huge career decision, and that's a major life decision. And the impact that the stress of our profession. And Tanya, you said it when you opened up about starting your own firm. Our profession is hard enough. This is not a cakewalk profession. For those of you who joined to make money, joke is on you, right? Because there is a million better ways and easier ways to make money in this world than being in the legal profession. It comes with so much responsibility and so much pressure. And then we layer on these man-made pressures of, billable hours, or you can't sit in my courtroom, or, you can't pump, or you can't have a baby, or you can't have flexibility. And it is amazing to hear, Angela, and that's why I love your part of the story, that there are places or managers who will support you when you can. And so maybe that's something to keep in mind too. We have a lot of work to do, and we have to figure out and have the conversation of how do we make these changes, and keep making these changes and talking about them. But there are people and there are situations and places that you can go. So take a good hard look at where you are and your managers and your company, and figure out, can you have the conversations? Can you get what you need there? And if not, then don't pile this all on yourself, right? Don't take this. You've got your mental health, you've got your family you need to support. And Sarah, what would you say? What are some other tips that moms can help do to not judge themselves and to deal with those types of stresses?
Hey, I think, to deal with those types of stresses, I think the first thing is just to set realistic boundaries, right? Figure out what I can do, what I can't do. Reach out to your support system, right? Like a long time ago, we had the Mama Village, and nowadays we don't really have that. But figure out who can be in your Mama Village. It's okay if it's men also, right? If your husband is in your Mama Village, that's fine too, right? Who's your support system when you're really struggling? What I like to tell the moms that I work with is don't should all over yourself, right? I should have, could have, would have, I should be able to do all of this. I should, right? So just set realistic expectations. I think also with moms, one thing that they really struggle with is that they, like especially moms who really want to focus on their career, but also with their family. Like one thing that I like to do with the moms that I work with is to just like figure out what their, I have like a values sheet, and like figure out what they really value. And it's okay if you really value your job and you really value your family, right? It's okay, right? So I think just, figuring out how to balance both. And just be compassionate to yourself, right? Don't tell yourself something that you wouldn't tell someone that you love. Just be kind to yourself, and just know that being a mom is pretty badass, and just give yourself some grace.
I love that, Sarah. I love that. We are absolutely our harshest critics. And that's such a great reflection. The things we say to ourselves, we would never say to our best friends or our sisters or our brothers. We would never say that. And there's so much feeling of inadequacy, I think, that can come as a new mom or throughout motherhood. I felt it having a child with a disability and special needs, I think, can add another another layer. You've got extra doctor's appointments or hospital visits. You need more resources. You might be trying to create specific learning or social experiences that don't happen organically. It's a whole other layer. And you can look at, okay, my child isn't developing the same way. They're not learning the same. They're behind everything else. And that just adds to feeling stressed and frazzled. It doesn't make you a failure, right? It doesn't make you a failure. You're dealing with a different set of cards. You're playing a different game. And I think it's so important to look around and give yourself that space. And you know what, as we work on that, because I know I just turned 50 in January and I'm working on that. It's the preaching what you do not practice. But it's, if you're working on that for you, then what I would encourage you to do is give that space while you're working on trying to provide it yourself. Give it to someone else. Give it to someone else. So when you see that someone's not breastfeeding, when you see that someone's, working, coming back to work 4 days after having a baby, when you see that someone's chose to stay at home and take 8 months of mat leave, that's their decision. That's their circumstance. You don't know their circumstance. You don't know their decisions. Give them space. Let's just support each other as women and mom. And that can be hard because when you're tearing yourself down, it's really quick to turn and tear somebody else down. Being at home, I couldn't be a stay-at-home mom. Why would I ever do that? I could never do that. I'd drive myself crazy. Even if that's true, that's okay. That's a different person. Because you don't want to be judged if you've chosen work and you have a support system at home, right? So let's create space for ourselves and let's create space for others. I think that's great. And I think it's a great segue into topic 2, which is breaking through the maternal walls and the systemic discrimination and gender inequality. And when we look at that, this was part of my awesome team that came up with some of these statistics for me and said that the prime childbearing years for women are the same years that are crucial for building your career. And I'd never thought of that before. Whereas for men, we know they have much longer biological windows. Not that I would encourage anyone to have a baby at 70, but technically they can, right? So I thought that was such an interesting perspective I hadn't thought of before, of the pressure that you could be in. And about half of women lawyers reported that they postponed having a child because of their career concerns. And Angela, to your point, I know people that didn't have kids or moved where they were, or have said, if I had a penny for every time a woman lawyer has said to me, so my partner and I talked about, my spouse and I talked about, do I want to be a partner or do I want to have a family? And then they just carry on. Like, that's an okay question that we should have to ask ourselves. And why is that a choice? And why do we have to ask ourselves that, right? And I think we have, and sorry, I missed one of the poll questions. Victoria's doing them for us. 2 things I'd love to ask the audience. Victoria, could we do poll question number 3? And I'm sorry if I messed you up by skipping poll question number 2. We were just having such a great discussion.
It's all good. The conversation was great. But here's poll number 3. Thank you.
So for number 3, we're just wondering, did you worry about the impact, or are you worried about the impact if you're pregnant now, about having a baby and how it would impact your career? So if you can just take a second and let us know your thoughts on that. Yeah, so again, I mean, it's just early responses, but we're getting an overwhelming of yes, significantly, right? And so that tells us, again, that there's work that needs to be done. So Angela and Tanya, can you share a little bit of what some of those impacts, and Angela, why don't we start with you, because you already touched on, you wouldn't have had a third baby if you weren't in such a positive, supportive experience. So maybe you can talk a little bit about the ways you were provided support, and you were given and felt held, and so that allowed you to do what you were doing.
Yeah, no, for sure. And actually, maybe I should not paint it completely rosy. I'll maybe tell you a story about what happened when I came back after baby number 1 and how that changed for baby number 2 and 3. So When I had baby number one, I decided to bank my holidays so I could come back to work part-time. And you could do that at the bank. So I had banked up enough holidays and take any vacation so I could come back 3 days a week. I did that. I took a whole year off for mat leave because, you know, that's what you do after baby number one normally. And I came back to work part-time. And when I had my year-end review, I was told that people were questioning my commitment. They were questioning the fact that, you know, I maybe wasn't as committed as I was before going on mat leave. And so I'll tell you another story. I actually went into labor and actually went into the office on the day that I delivered. I didn't know any better. I didn't think my contractions would come that quickly but I actually went into the office because I took my husband with me and I said, I need to get this memo to my mat leave replacement. I can't, you know, I'm like, it's okay. I'll be in labor for days, right? So like I got him to drive me to the office and I get to the office and I'm having contractions and I can barely speak. I delivered my first baby 2 hours later. And so that's a kind of commitment that I showed to my manager and to the bank before. I was a rock star. Like I took him a year off and I came back to work part-time and that meant to other people, unfortunately, the perception that gave when I was in the office only 3 days a week was that I was not committed. The other thing that I was doing while I was off on mat leave, we were building our own house. I was a general contractor. We planned our own house, we designed our own house, and we built it. So I was talking about my house at work. And apparently that was seen as a negative. Well, all you do is talk about your house. And I'm like, can I not have other interests other than being a bank lawyer and a mom? Right. So that was actually really eye-opening to me. The fact that was seen as a negative. Now, that was a manager that is no longer at HSBC Bank Canada. And but it actually really stuck with me. And I thought to myself, whoa, like I can never take a year off again. I can never come back to work part-time. When I had baby number two, I had a different manager. Her name was Lilac Bosma, who's now the GC. I was able to take 4 months off of my own choice, but I came back to work working from home. So I was able to work from home 5 days a week. I did come into the office one day just for a few hours, just to say hi, hello. And then in 2017, I had baby number three, so back-to-back kids, and I took 6 weeks off. But again, I was able to work from home. I had a very, very supportive manager that trusted me, that I can still have a baby, I can still be the rock star that I was before, but I can work from home. I don't sleep at night. I still sleep with my kids. I get a shitty sleep. I don't want to dress up and commute an hour to get to work. I'd rather work from home. And this was before COVID. Remember this, right? So this is before everybody worked from home. I just asked for the support I needed, but I also got the support that I needed. And I know not everybody's in that position, but sometimes if you don't ask, you don't get. I mean, I was scared to ask, right? Because that wasn't the first experience with baby number one. And I'll tell everybody, right? Like I was exhausted. Like I was exhausted all the time. I don't think I have slept properly in probably 10 or 12 years. So for me to get dressed up like this morning is actually a really big deal.
And very big deal. You look great.
Thank you. But yeah, so I think you need to ask for that support, but you also need to be in an environment where you have your management willing to give you that support and also trust you as well, right? I've been at the bank 17 years. You have to have a level of trust that like, even if I'm working from home, even if I don't start at 9:30 in the morning, I will get my stuff done. I will be there for my clients.
And thank you for sharing that. And one of the things that I think is so important out of that is, and it resonates with your stories, Tanya, of your experiences, and then I'm coming back to you, is that it's so easy, like when you're talking about your experience with baby one, Angela, is to think it's you. Like people can make you feel bad. You're following bank policies. You're doing an amazing job as an employee and a contributor to your company. And some people's comments or some people's attitudes or an inflexible environment or outrageous environment, like apparently the judges in this province and probably country, makes you feel like there's something wrong with you. And I think that's a big part of what I hope is our message today, is that does not make something wrong with you, that makes something wrong with the system, and that makes something wrong with maybe specific people you're working with, or maybe the organization you're working with. And let's focus on that. Let's acknowledge that, but let's try not to internalize that. And one thing, Vic, can we do poll number 4? I'd just be really interested to know, because it's, Angela, you made a comment where you said your first baby, everybody takes a year. And then Tanya, I think you said you took like 4 hours, and Angela's in the office while she's in labor, about to give birth. So just would love to ask, and if you are a man or a spouse or a partner, then say for your partner how long they took, or how long your paternity leave was if you took paternity leave. So just to get a sense of, I'd love to hear how people, because I feel like, and Sarah, you said this, that there was not bad, 6 months, 50%. I feel like in the legal profession, there's, because of that strong pressure we have in our field, that people can feel less able to take a longer mat leave. So that's great, 62%, 6+. Maybe it is changing. That's great. That's better than I thought. We should have done 12 months plus to see, or 9 months plus. But okay, thank you. Thanks everyone for participating. Appreciate it. That's great. But I think that's really important about understanding what you need. And as you said, Angela, recognizing that's huge, like working full-time from home. We're talking pre-COVID. I know now it's hard for people to understand, but that is huge. And I love that you said you were afraid to ask for that, but you did anyway, right?
Yeah.
Because this isn't about, oh, I did this because I don't care and it doesn't matter and I'm independently wealthy and I'm just, can be freewheeling and nothing matters. It's like, it's terrifying to do those things, but it's so important. Tanya, share with us a little bit about how things have been for you and those concerns and deciding to have kids, and professionally how you've been balancing and managing.
Well, I think I was just, Angela's point resonated with me because there was one particular judge. So I had judge number 1 when I was pregnant, and I had to ask to sit down. But then right after I had delivered our daughter, before I had to proceed with the another trial with the breastfeeding incident, I had another, like, a very complicated motion to argue, and it was in Simcoe. And at that point in time, it was you had to appear in person to argue this. And so when we scheduled a meeting with the first judge to deal with a timetable, I was afraid, or felt nervous, just like Angela explained. But I said, I just had delivered a baby like 2 weeks ago. I know it's presumed in person. And he's like, okay, say no more. I will give you permission to argue this from home. And I was like, this is great. And so when we did argue that motion, judge number 2, who was the presiding judge, I said to him, even though I felt nervous because of what had happened, I said, Your Honor, I just delivered a baby. I need more time during the recess to pump milk. He said, stop right there. Let me know when you need a break. Let me know how long you need. And I thought, this is wonderful. So I think it's important, not to stereotype anyone or any system, because everyone's kind of an individual, and it doesn't hurt to ask, because the worst you'll get is no. And sometimes people will surprise you. So in terms of personally, it's very helpful to have a lot of support. My parents are very supportive. Right now, I'm attending a conference in Denver. My parents are at our home taking care of our kids. They volunteer, they like spending time with our kids, I think, more than us, but but they're at home, they're taking care of them and not listening to my rules. And so that's very helpful to have that support. I was born in Toronto. My parents are Jamaican. It's really nice that my parents will make food and put in Tupperware containers, like Jamaican food, because I like that our children will learn about the food and the culture. So that's also very, very helpful. And it makes me feel less stressed. And I really do appreciate that my husband, my family, my close friends, they do what they can to make me feel less stressed. They appreciate Tanya works many times 7 days a week, and we're not going to stress her out more than she needs to be. So that's very, very helpful. I think it's also helpful to have a strong emotional intelligence. The first time I had to attend a conference and I missed our daughter's first birthday. And so I was sad about it. I got up, I cried. I went to the conference and then someone asked me, how old is your child, your children? So I explained it, today's her first birthday, and they're like, that must have been hard. I said, yeah, I cried. And so it just made me feel okay to say I'm human. Even and hopefully she forgave me. And even at night, if I get up, sometimes I don't sleep throughout the night properly because I'm thinking about a million things at the same time. And so when I wake up, sometimes I try and do a meditation. There's different meditation apps. I do the Peloton meditation, and that helps me fall asleep again, or just practice the exercises and try to get my mind to kind of settle down. Exercising is very important too to me. I think of it as an appointment with my health. If I think of it that way, then I'm less likely to skip the classes. But I do feel like it brings me down, calms me down a little bit to be able to exercise. Taking family vacations are also important every few months, and also giving myself time to recharge, which is difficult because with young children, especially the 5-year-old, he wants to do this. And so just giving myself some time to be able to recharge as well as spend time with the family. So those are some things I think are important to recognize. Also recognize when you're burning out. Recognize when there is a mental toll being taken on you. And that's why I moved my trials, because I'm like, I just don't want to be surprised again like this. It's just too much. And kind of also appreciate that if you burn out, you're not going to be able to take care of anyone else, including your children, your spouse, your elderly parents. You won't be able to do it. So you might as well try to take care of yourself the best way that you can.
That's so important. It's so important. And it's so important, and it sounds so simple, but I honestly think as a woman and a parent, it's so counterintuitive. I remember being on my first flight with kids, and they were like, and the oxygen mask appears, and should it appear in the state of emergency, put your own mask on. And you're like, what? Who would do that? Of course you're going to put the mask of your kids on first. And it's like, oh, I see, you're going to pass out and there's no one to help your kids. So it's a hard concept. It sounds easy, but it's a hard concept to really internalize and put out there. And Sarah, what would you say, any other emotions or challenges that you've heard from moms that are struggling with motherhood and career in the balance, or any other tips to build on what Angela and Tanya said?
Yeah, I mean, the three most common emotions that I see with moms during the pregnancy and postpartum stage is really shame, anger, and grief. There's a lot of shame surrounding mental health, right? Postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, the baby blues, intrusive thoughts, which are so common, right? Those thoughts that, you're holding your baby and you're thinking, oh my God, am I going to drop my baby? There's a lot of shame surrounding whether you come back to work too early or you take a longer mat leave, right? It's never enough, right? Like, oh, you're already back and your baby's just a month old, or what, you're taking 7 months or even a year off. So there's a lot of shame surrounding that. Body shame, right? Especially Instagram or social media, suddenly you're supposed to bounce back. So that could be very difficult. Comparing yourself to other mothers, right? Comparing your child to other children. And just the shame surrounding being the perfect mom. In terms of grief, grieving the person that you were before you had a baby, especially when it comes to your career. I was able to do all these things and then suddenly I can't, or suddenly I feel like, I have to shift my priorities. So that could be, just grieving that, grieving the relationship dynamic that you had with older children, or the relationship that you had with your partner, right? Again, this idea that having a baby will make my relationship with my partner stronger is actually, it's oftentimes the opposite, right? Because you're barely sleeping, you're stressed about a lot of things, and you just end up snapping at each other sometimes. And, it just takes a little bit of an adjustment and figuring out how to regulate your emotions and to verbalize your needs to get to a point where your relationship is, a little bit better. grieving the expectations of what you thought your delivery or breastfeeding is going to look like, or your mat leave was going to look like, or having a baby, right? We have this idea that having a baby is going to be this magical experience. And then suddenly, realizing, oh, wait, it's not this magical. It's actually very, very, very difficult. And in terms of anger, there's a lot of anger surrounding, when it comes to work, suddenly feeling like, wait, my job isn't taking me seriously, right? If you're not working for, if your job is not so supportive and suddenly they're not giving you certain files, or you're realizing that your coworkers are excelling in their career and you're suddenly not, right? So there's a lot of anger surrounding that. Just anger, kind of, there's a lot that you're going through, especially, in terms of mat leave. Sometimes people or coworkers would think that mat leave is a vacation when it's actually not. And just others just not being understanding, giving you unsolicited advice. So that, I think, is the three most common emotions that I see during the postpartum stage. And I love what Tanya said in terms of, just checking in with yourself, making sure that you're, I like to do a self-care checklist with my moms, and kind of, I list different items. Okay, where are you at in terms of your food intake? Where are you at in terms of your sleep, in terms of your stress levels, in terms of where to, because if you're really struggling, oftentimes it's because you're not really taking care of yourself, right? Your moms oftentimes take care of everyone else. And it's so often when, I ask a mom, tell me a little bit about your food intake. And a mom would say, this whole day, I didn't eat until 2 p.m. And even then I ate like 3 granola bars for lunch. And I just moved on to the next thing. Cause that's, so we just, take care of ourselves. I love that Tanya said, exercising is really making an appointment, to show up to yourself, to your health. So yeah, we just want to check in with ourselves and making sure that, to look, like, I love that you said also, just to figure out when we're heading toward burnout. So figure out what those triggers are, and just figure out what you need in order to feel better.
I love
So
that.
if I can say something, so
Of course.
I'm going to be completely honest with the audience. All these things are great, but I fail at every single one of them. Absolutely every single. I am not the perfect mom. I don't sleep enough. I still sleep with my 6 and 7-year-old in our king size bed. I sometimes will shower at 2 p.m. I will have a granola bar for lunch, right? I will go to bed. I will have a night shift for work between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. So, I'm listening to this and I'm like, I don't do this. It's so hard to find time for yourself. Like, I don't exercise. I was exercising, but now I'm wrapped up in something else outside of work and I don't have time. And I will often ask myself this and look at myself in the mirror. And I'm like, crap, you haven't exercised in 6 months. What is wrong with you? Right. And so these things are like all great. And I think they're all wonderful points, but they're also very, very hard to do when you're, I have a 6-year-old, 7-year-old and 12-year-old. We are Uber drivers. Like, they're not babies anymore. I was so happy when my daughter started kindergarten. I said, I'm going to have free time. I'm going to be so productive during the day. I'm not going to be interrupted. And I don't understand where my day goes. Like, and they come home from school and we are carting them to different activities, but I still have to work, right? I still have to get my work done. I mean, luckily I have a very supportive husband who also works from home, and my parents live 3 blocks away. But yeah, these are all really hard things to do. Like, they're easy to say, but they're really, really hard to do. And it's really hard to sometimes take a look at yourself in the mirror and say, I have to do these things. So
I love that, and I see that both Sarah and Tanya and probably most of the audience like want to chime in on that. And the one thing I just want to add first, Angela, is I was thinking the same thing, and my youngest is 23 and the only one still living at home. And I often look up from my computer and I'm like, oh, it's 3 o'clock. I haven't eaten today. Oh, I haven't. So these are patterns that we get into even when our kids don't live with us anymore. They are lifelong patterns of not taking care of ourselves. I think that's so important. Okay, Tanya, you go, and then Sarah, you go.
I think, Angela, I would like to respectfully disagree with you, because I think you are the perfect mom. Perfection is defined by the love that you have in your home and for your children.
Mhm.
Just because you may do something different that works for you, then that is perfectly fine. And so, I mean, when you were speaking, I was actually thinking of my mother. She was, she's retired, but she was a nurse, and then she went back to school to become an operating room nurse. And she worked a lot. You know, we had M&Ms, put that in the oven to warm up for dinner. You know, but to me, she's the perfect mom. She showed me how it is to work hard, to have a lot of love, and that's worked out for my sister and I, who turned out, I think we turned out all right. So and also my caveat is that I'm very fortunate because my husband and I defined our roles before we decided to have children, and he's a primary caregiver. So he's the one that encourages me to exercise when I feel like it's a lot having to supervise almost 15 people, worry about bringing in work. I also work with a tribunal dealing with suspension of lawyers' licenses as a judge. And so he encourages me to rest. He sleeps with our daughter so I can rest, because he said, like, we're very, very empathetic towards each other, because he said, you know, you had her on Friday, you went back to work on Monday. That's a lot for anyone. So let me do what I can to make your life easier. And so that and I get criticized. Like, one of my doctors actually said to me, you're so busy. Like, do you think you really should have children? And so I think that we really perhaps need to consider that we're not doing anything wrong. Like, even when a judge won't let me pump milk or let me ask everyone permission to sit down, I'm not doing anything wrong. That's nothing, like, there's nothing wrong with me. Like, you actually have the problem. It's not me. But my job is not to argue with them. My job is to be an advocate and try my hardest to win the trials, which we did. I say we because my daughter, I feel like she was a part of that. And if exercise works for you or doesn't work for you, or a granola bar does or doesn't, then that's perfectly fine, as long as you feel okay and as long as your family feels that it's okay. So I just think, Angela, you're doing a wonderful job, and
Thank
it really should pat yourself on the back. And we as lawyers are perfectionists, and we're never good enough or perfect enough. And sometimes we have to say, you know what, I'm all right. I'm doing okay. It may not be perfect in my eyes, but my kids like know that I love them. My family knows I love them, and that's the most important thing right now.
And that is so important. I love that, because it's the language we use, right? It's the language. Like, to say, I'm not a perfect mom. I'm not doing it well enough. I'm not doing what I should. And it's like, that's, first of all, what is perfection? Should that even be the goal? And you know, so if we even talk about success, again, how do you define success? And are you defining it based on what you see and think other people have, or some crazy social notion, right? That's not based in reality. Success for you could be, as we said, taking a year off, sleeping with your kids, you know, putting everything in them, building the ball hockey community that you're building. Success for someone else is like Tanya, you know, my husband's the primary caregiver. I'm giving it all at the office and the business I'm building, and all of the advocacy I'm doing for the profession. And it's different for everyone. We all have our own definitions of success. So I think we subconsciously swallow society's definition of success. And then we measure ourselves against that, even when it's something we don't even want. So if success is supposed to be our title, our salary, you know, that we have perfectly happy, you know, kids that have A's and are in the best schools and are, you know, rep hockey or rep whatever. Like, is that really our definition of success? Is that like what works for you? And so listen to that language and your self-talk, and as Tanya said, let's be kinder. Like, it's just, it's like, you know, when I have these conversations with all of you, you know, I mean, I know Sarah's on as our resident expert, but she's also a mom of 2 kids under the age of 5, right? Like, she's living this and breathing this. And it's my, you know, I sit here amazed at all of you and impressed by all of you, and know that. And that goes for everybody in the audience as well. So let's, as we said earlier, let's be a bit kinder. Say to yourself what you would say to somebody else. And Sarah, I think you had something you wanted to add on that.
Yeah. So I mean, Angela, thank you so much for your what?
Oh, perfect.
Okay.
I want her to feel she's not perfect.
Okay. Yeah, Angela, thank you so much for your honesty. And I mean, Tanya said it perfectly that it really is what works for you. Like when I do the self-care checklist with moms and I list the different items, I ask, how important is this item to you? Would you like help with this? And how would that help look like? Right? Because sometimes it's like, yeah, I'm sleeping like 2 hours a night, but I'm fine. That's not something I want to work on. I want to work on, my stress levels or something else, right? So it really is what works for you, and if you're happy, if your kids are happy, then that's awesome. That's good. And also, in terms of exercise, when you say like I haven't exercised in so many years or whatever, I think it doesn't have to be an all or nothing. Like for me, I exercise 20 minutes a day because that's all I can do, right? I'm like, I can spend 20 minutes on my phone or whatever. So if it's like, if I'm on the Peloton for 20 minutes or if I'm taking a walk for 20 minutes, that's good enough. And just like letting go of like being perfect.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. And let's come back to that in a second, because we've sort of bled into topic 3, which is balance. But just before we leave this and talk about the difficult situations we've faced in the workplace, because I know there's some leaders who have registered and are with us today as men and as women leaders, and some of us are in leadership roles. So what I'd like to say is, based on the experiences you've had, what would you say to leaders, or what did you do for leaders? What's a piece of advice you would give them in managing working parents or moms? And I'm going to out Angela in that, because I have the benefit of knowing her boss, as I mentioned. And Lilac said, when we were talking about Angela going for work from home at a time when no one worked from home, she was like, she's one of my superstars. I would never want to lose this woman. What can I do to keep her? And that's the viewpoint that she came from. So if it's like she wants to work from home, sure, work from home. She's like, her client group loves her. She does an amazing job. She's an absolute expert. She goes, the extra mile. Why would I want to lose that? You want to work from home? Sure, work from home. And I know it's not that easy. I don't mean to put that on leaders. It's not that easy in some companies and in some cultures or some lines of business for someone to be fully remote. But let's think of that from the leadership perspective. If you've been a leader, what have you or what do you try to incorporate to make it easier for working parents? Or what do you need from your leader to make that a more successful engagement for everybody?
Yeah, I mean, I think the key is trust, right? I think that you need to have a serious conversation with your manager, and you have to be able to build that trust with them. If they trust you and you trust them, you should be able to work from wherever. And I know that sometimes that's not easy to do. That's sometimes difficult to do depending on the circumstance. But if you don't have trust, then nothing's going to work. So I've been working from home since 2016. Nobody knows what I do at home. I could be sleeping 6 or 7 hours a day, right? And not actually working, right? But but I have been working. My clients are happy. When I have my year-end review, they say that I'm more responsive than people who work in the office, right? Because I'm always on my BlackBerry or on my phone, probably on it way too much, right? So I mean, I don't. It's actually it's a hard thing to define other than trust. If you don't trust your employees, well, that's kind of the end of the story. And I could tell you a story. I remember coming back 6 weeks after baby number 3, and I was stressed out, and I was still nursing my daughter. In fact, my daughter nursed till she was 3.5. And I said, yeah, like I can't get on video calls. I have to be on the phone all the time because I look like crap. And I was dealing with this big file, and it was a big deal. And I just came back, and nobody really picked up on it when I was off. And I was dealing with her CEO, and she called me at like 6 o'clock, and I picked up the phone, and like I was ready and I was giving her all the advice that I needed to do. And I think she heard my daughter crying in the background. And she's like, what's that? It's like, oh, I just had a baby daughter 6 weeks ago. She's like, what are you doing talking to me? You're not supposed to be talking to me at 6 o'clock. You should be like nursing your daughter. She's clearly upset, right? And it was that kind of sort of culture and trust from our now CEO. It was amazing. Like this woman, you know, she doesn't really know me that well, but she knows me well enough that I'm in the legal department. I'm answering her call at 6 o'clock. I can trust her to do the right thing. She can go deal with her baby and she can get, you know, if she has work to do later on tonight, she'll do it. Right. So I know it sounds overly simplistic, but like so much of this is about building a relationship with people so they know who you are and they know what you're made of and that they know that they can trust you.
Yeah. And if they don't, if you can't build that, because I think it's very obvious. I know it's funny. People say, oh, well, you work from home. They don't know if I'm working or not. It becomes very clear very quickly if someone's not working, right? It doesn't matter what area of law you're in. It doesn't even matter what profession you're in, whether you're private practice, in-house. I mean, you know, if Tanya shows up at court and hasn't prepared, that's going to be pretty clear. If you've got the business folks escalating and asking your manager or other people, like, where's Angela? She's not responding. This isn't done. This deadline's been moved out. So I know you're being facetious when you're like, I could be sleeping 6 or 7 hours a day, but we all know you're not, and everybody else knows you're not. Because as you just said, you're often more responsive. Tanya, what would you add to that from a leaders and what we can provide and what kind of culture we can create? Because you are on one side, but you're also on the other. You are a leader in an organization. So what are you doing to support yourself and other working parents?
Well, I'll add to what Angela said in terms of flexibility and also slowing down a little bit. And what I mean by slowing down a little bit is we have there's a lawyer in our team who recently he had another child, and we're just so used to being so transactional nowadays, right? So you pick up the phone just to speak about that particular file, you hang up the phone. But sometimes slowing down to say, how are you? How's your family doing? Is there anything I can help you with? And really listen. And then if there's something you can do to help, even if it's helping find a stroller or clothes or something, because our children are not too far apart in age, then and help. Just show like we're all human beings. Just show a little bit of a human side to yourself, even though if you can. And it's hard because we have so much pressure because of like just the time constraints that we have. In terms of flexibility, it's important, I think, to be able to work from home, and I do most of the time. But I think when you're junior, you do benefit from collaboration and being in person, even if it's just once a week. And so to take that into consideration, so you can continue to learn when you're junior, because when a junior is around me and I'm in court or I'm dealing with emotion, I'll say what I'm thinking during our breaks. I wouldn't necessarily pick up the phone to call the junior during the break to say what I'm thinking. And you learn a lot by just that way. So, but in terms of flexibility, if a child is sick, care is not available, let your employee work from home. If their time is needed to be taken off for medical appointments, let them. Creating a work schedule that's flexible, not 9 to 5 doesn't work for everyone. And as long as someone finishes their work, then I don't see what the problem is. And also flexibility to let someone work from home on a pretty much on a steady basis, maybe come into the office once a week or so, if you're newer to the workforce, just to learn that way. So I think that might help a little bit. And just stopping and saying, how are you? Really, how are you? Not how are you because that's what I'm supposed to do. How are you? Because I care. So I think those two may help.
I love
Oh,
that.
sorry. And also think of the big picture, right? So, with these judges, certain things have been done for such a certain long period of time that so when someone like me asks to be accommodated, it might kind of throw them off a little bit, right? Because it's just for the last 20, 30 years, you didn't have to really worry about these things. And so think about the big picture. Is it necessary for me to even be in court to provide closing submissions? at a trial because no one's testifying. So then, like, is it necessary to accomplish your end goal to do these things, even though you've done it this way for the last 20 years? And so I think as leaders, we get used to doing things a certain way. And sometimes we might have to think to ourselves, is it necessary to get the job done? And also, will that help morale if I do it this way? Am I going to push somebody out of the workforce? Or am I going to have somebody who's like a rock star, like it's Angela, stay in the workforce and decide to have more children because I've been accommodating, because I can see the big picture?
I love that. I love that. And I think, and I think a big part of that as a leader is it's being brave, I think, because it's truly, part of that is truly looking at yourself. And there's not actually say, oh, you know what, I don't like working parents, you know, I try to discriminate against people on all of these grounds. Like, most people don't actually talk that way. Most people would say, I'm a very inclusive leader, you know, we have all sorts of flexibility. And sometimes you might actually perceive yourself that way. But then if someone does have a sick child, or as you said, and it's a last minute emergency, and it's actually really inconvenient for you, it actually doesn't go with what needs to be done today, or it puts extra pressure on you, or you have to pick something up. That is the moment where you have to examine your actions and your reactions. Is it, of course, family comes first, go deal with that, we've got this. And underneath, or you hang up the phone and then you go, ah, like, how am I going to manage this? But you don't do that on the phone. You know, you don't sigh and go, all right, well, you know, when is this going to be done? And when is that going to be done? And where is that? So you're saying yes, but it's like, yes, but. Yes, but. So now the person is off, but they're thinking, oh my gosh, like I have this pressure. Angela, I think it's like what you were saying. What I mean is what you were saying about when you came back after the first baby, where it was like you saved up all this time. I'm sure you were still getting all the work done and you're doing it in 3 days a week. And then it's like, oh, she's working 3 days a week. Like, again, it's like so you're not getting, people are talking one way, but their actions don't line up. So I would say, as a leader, look into yourself. And then the really brave thing, I think, especially for type A lawyers, is ask them, what do you need? And Tanya and Angela, you were both saying those same things, but just say, you know, what is it you need? Maybe it is, you could say, hey, we have a work from home policy if you need to work from home. Maybe that parent doesn't want to work from home because they're like, I can't focus at home. Everybody's at home. My partner's at home. All the kids are at home. It's mayhem at my house. My parents are always coming in. I come into the office for a break and relaxation. And that's when I focus. So don't be like, hey, you know what? You don't have to come into work. Ask, and everybody's different, right? Obviously, you know, so every mom is different. Every parent is different. Every situation at home is different. So ask, what do you need? And the really crazy, scary question, at least it is for me, I'm a total type A perfectionist. What could I do better? What could I do better? What can the organization do better to support you? And I do realize there's financial realities, there's commercial realities. If you're in an in-house department, your manager may not be able to do what you need to do to accommodate because the organization doesn't allow for it, right? You know, Tanya, you're going to end up in court with some judges, as you said, who don't know how to handle this and are all awkward because, you know, 30 years ago, no one with boobs was standing in the that. So I think that, but it's asking that question, and it's terrifying because as perfectionists, we don't want to hear that we could do something better. It's like, what? I could be doing better, than I'm a failure. And it's like, why is Christine on the floor? And it's like, oh, because someone said she could improve on something. But that's the kind of, so I think it is scary and it takes bravery. And Angela, you mentioned that earlier. It takes courage to go to your employer and say, I need this. I need to talk to you about this. I don't want to leave this workplace. I love it here. I love my work. Can we talk about these very real challenges I'm having? And you are probably going to be hopefully surprised where they dig in and they don't want to lose you either. If there's a mismatch there, There's a whole big broad world out there, and try not to fall into fears of scarcity that you've got to be where you are or there's no place else. Tanya will hire you. I'll hire you. We'll figure it out. Sarah will counsel you. We'll get you through it.
No, I think that's a great point. I remember when I first moved from Toronto to Vancouver. I mean, I'm from Vancouver, but I remember when I first moved, I took a job at a firm in Vancouver downtown, and I had done the interviews over the phone. I thought it would be a great fit. This is right before I got married, and I lasted 2 weeks. I'm like, I am not. This is not the place for me. I am not working till midnight every night. I'm not working with a partner. I'm working with a senior associate who is a real big a-hole, like just not a nice person. And I said to myself, I'm not doing this. I'm not going to stay here. And I didn't have a job. I think I had an interview with HSBC for another job, and I didn't get that job. And I just took the risk. I'm like, I'm done. So it is a scary thing to do, but you can do it. I mean, I did end up sitting in my parents' basement for 2 months, but I did eventually get a job at some point, right? I wasn't going to be unemployed forever, which I thought I was going to be. But yeah, it's if something is not right for you, if you're in a situation where your manager is not accommodating, you're dealing with people that don't understand and don't want to build a relationship with you that's going to be long lasting, leave. And I know it's easier said than done, and I know it's scary, but you are not going to be unemployed forever. That's for sure.
And that's an important, it sounds silly, but it's not, right? Like it is important. I find we fall for this scarcity, right? There's only so much happiness in the world. There's only so much money in the world. There's only so many jobs or opportunities in the world. And what if we can't get our peace? And I don't believe that. I don't believe we're bound by that. So let's remove that barrier, because the barrier exists in our own mind, right? So we are our harshest critic. We mostly place the obstacles in front of us. We've been talking about systemic discrimination. There are definitely obstacles that are legitimately in front of us placed by others. Let's recognize them, shine a light on them, and figure out how to blow them up. But the majority, let's also deal with the ones that are in our head. And it's, do we have a couple of questions? We're, of course, as I knew we would be, we're like way short of time. We haven't covered everything we wanted to say, but it's just such a rich discussion, and I think such an important topic. So we've been avoiding the audience, and we haven't meant to at all. So, throw out questions if you have any. Team, I don't know if there's any that you think we should address, but I just think it's really important discussion that we have and talking about support. And I think we've done it. Someone shout out and yell at me if there's a question to answer. But in the meantime, because I know we only have a few minutes for and thank you everyone for staying on and giving us this 90 minutes and what we know is a crazy busy time. But I love all through the discussion, I think we've been having the conversations about support. Like support with your partner, right? And I don't mean this facetiously, but kind of like with your workplace and your manager, have those hard discussions if you're not getting that support at home, if you're not being seen, if you're not being appreciated, and don't have somebody saying, as Tanya had mentioned, sometimes we don't have that at home. And I just want to touch on that and say that's not okay either. So have those conversations, do whatever work you need to do in that scenario. And if that's not a healthy, supportive scenario, just like in the workplace, I say this non-judgmentally, maybe that's not a scenario you should be in either, right? Because we need to support and surround ourselves with people who are building us up, not who are tearing us down, and people who are providing us with support and love. And that goes in the home and that goes in the workplace as well. So again, that scarcity feeling, I can't do any better, there isn't any better. If you really aren't getting support and being held and loved, then that's not your only option, personally or professionally. And yes, Nairi, that is a whole other CPD. Tanya, yes, go ahead.
In terms of scarcity, it's also important to keep in mind not just a job, but creating your own job. I left my firm. I opened this firm with a $5,000 loan from my father and a part-time assistant and now we have almost 15 people. So we can also create our own jobs. And if there isn't one out there for us at that moment in time, and you feel that's okay for you.
I love that. We're really employable. I mean, there's people always need lawyers, and we're highly skilled, smart people anyway. So there's lots of jobs you can do. And I know lots of people who've even left and gone into a business role or whatever. There's so much out there for you. There's so much out there for you as a mom, as a working mom, and however you are doing it, exactly as we talked about today, you're doing it right and you're doing enough. And let's just talk about getting more support, finding supports, finding time for you. Sarah, why don't we talk just in the last couple of minutes before I know everyone has to go. And please do join the community on our LinkedIn page. Let's stay in touch. Let's keep the conversation going and the support going. But I'd love a couple of tips or exercises that I know you do with some of your moms to talk about what can they do to make sure whatever it is they need, they're tuning into that. And could you share a couple of those exercises with us?
Yeah, of course. I first wanted to add, when you have to ask your employer for accommodations, don't feel bad. Like I said before, being a mom is badass. I mean, you being a mom is, you are the portal to humanity. And if all moms decided that we don't want to have children anymore, then humanity would go extinct, right? And we don't want that. So what you're doing is actually incredible. So Tanya, you should have told the judge, you're welcome that I actually had a baby, or that I am pregnant right now, because what we're doing is incredible. And I think in terms of, the exercises, what I like to do with moms, I mentioned this before, the self-care checklist. And what I like to also do is to go through the who I am exercise. So these are questions that I like to ask moms. What was my favorite thing to do as a child? I think oftentimes we kind of have, when we become moms, there's this awkward time when we just feel a little lost. So just go back to the basics and be like, okay, what did I used to love doing as a child? What would my friends say about me, right? Like, what's the best thing about me? I am most proud of this, right? Because sometimes we're so harsh on ourselves that we want to go back and be like, okay, what am I most proud of? And I think it is unfair when, and then you want to answer that. So if you're saying, I think it's unfair that women are not being treated well in the workplace, so then you can decide, okay, what can I do differently, right? So for example, like, Tanya, for you decided, hey, I'm going to create my own opportunities in the workplace. And Angela, for you, right, you advocated for yourself in the workplace. And I believe the most important thing a mother can do for her child is, so these are some questions that you can really ask yourself. And, sometimes when we try to be the perfect mom, at the end of the day, it's like, I believe the most important thing that that a mother can do for a child is to be happy, is to show them how I'm able to regulate my emotions, to show them that it's okay to take care of myself sometimes. It's okay to, really value my job. There's nothing wrong with that, right? So we want to kind of go back to the basics and just figure out, like, what do I need to be happy? Who am I? And that's it.
Love it. Love it. Thank you. Thank you. Well, I know we are at time. I cannot thank the three of you enough. I knew this was going to be great because I knew you were going to be awesome. And I told them this beforehand. And then Angela got mad at me and said I put pressure on her. And I'm like, no, I just know that you would be awesome. And the really funny thing is I tried to make them feel better by saying, don't worry about anything. Just be yourselves. Just remember your moms and that you work. And then Sarah, you said you forgot to mention you had kids in the introduction. We're like, it's perfect. But it's all okay because as we said, this is real. This is a real discussion of connecting in a community, and I think these are the types of conversations we do not have enough of in the legal profession, probably in the world globally in every profession. but it's, you know, we are, thank you, Jacqueline, we are recording this. We are going to have it for people, you know, and I was terrified when we set this up. It's the first one we've done like this, that, you know, no one would sign up, no one would join. I think we were about 125 registrations. Like this is just our first time with sort of limited marketing resources. And I think it's because it's an important thing to talk about, that we can come together as community and share openly. So thank you to the three of you for saying, yeah, here's the good, the bad, and the ugly. But you know what? It is an amazing thing. We're keeping the human race going, as Sarah said, but we're also creating so much love and joy in our hearts and our families. And that's the part we haven't really focused on today, because we don't need to, because that's just so obvious, and the clear benefit of how much we love our kids and our families and what we do. So I just really appreciate all of you making the time out of your crazy schedules to do this, and same for everyone joining us. Thanks for taking the time to connect.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it. Have a great day. Angelina, I know you put in that people could ask questions. So I know if anyone does, we can share those. I can share those with the panelists after as well, if there's certain questions for specific people. And then hopefully, as we said, we can have people join the LinkedIn community and just keep the conversation going. And Sarah, I'd like to share your resource and contact information so people will know how to get in touch with you and the services you provide and resources, and that's so important. And we talk about that, and luckily we are talking a little bit more about mental health, but making sure people know there's nothing wrong with reaching out to talk to somebody about what you're going through. And in fact, that shows a lot of courage and bravery. So encourage people to do that as well. So it's a place we can share resources and just keep the conversation going.
I just want to thank everyone, all of the panelists and the moderators again, because this webinar went really beautifully, and also I'm really excited to have the LinkedIn group up and the community that we're going to be building for parents.
Thank you, Angelina. And thank you to my team, and Victoria's coming on camera. Thank you. So Summer and Angelina and Victoria, just give a quick wave, please. There they are. That's my team. Hopefully you can see them. And they're, well, part of my team. There's other parts here too, Jamin, Caroline, and Sabrina. But this is the team who helped create this, who did the tech and does all the great marketing and videos. I don't know if anyone saw our videos on LinkedIn. Every time Angelina makes our videos, and every time she makes them, I show them to my parents and they cry.
I haven't seen the videos. I'm going to go look.
Oh, go look. They're so powerful. They're so great. It's all these images of, you know, everything we've done, right? Like a baby in one hand and a laptop in the other, and like a phone, and like it's so real and moving. And so I appreciate it all so much. And they're the ones who got the word out so people would know to join us today. So as we always say, it takes a village, right? It takes a village.
Absolutely does.
All right. Well, thanks, everyone. We'll let everyone go and get on with their day. To the team behind us who made it happen, thank you. To our panelists, so much gratitude. And I'm still in awe. Of how awesome you all are.
Great. Thanks, Christine. All right.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.